and welcome to your daily Gameface. I am Dr. Kim Lannon, and I am here with.
Where are you going?
Whoa!
Yeah, all right.
You're like, where are you going? Were you worried?
Yes.
I had all these things run through my head.
I know.
I
could see it.
I was being a rhymer in my head, but I stopped.
I could see it happening.
You could see it coming through my head. Well, I was like, Lou the Pooh. And that was the first thing that came to my head. But not in like a weird, bad way. But It was kind of weird and bad, right?
Kind of weird and bad.
I know, but It was funny. Yep. That's what came to my mind, Lou the Pooh. Like Pooh Bear, not poo as in shit.
I know. I assumed.
Like Lou the Pooh.
But you edited it nicely.
And then I said it anyway.
Yeah.
Sometimes I have to keep everything in my head bubble because that's what I do for a living. But then in this case, I don't always have to do that because you're not my client. Right?
It's always tough, isn't it? It's a good skill set, by the way.
Oh, to keep it in my head. Oh,
people who can keep things in their head.
My head bubble is full.
The unexpressed thought is a very good thing.
Yes, I know, right?
Yeah.
Yes, especially in so many of the cases that I could express things. I had many things, and I was like, oh, I could say that today on air to Lou. And I was like, no. Because then it would open a door. I don't want to open any doors.
Okay, fine.
No doors. I like keeping the doors shut.
Nice.
Right?
Yep.
It makes life easier.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, we've had 2 beautiful days in a row with no rain.
I know.
Except for the fact that the weekend was completely rain, but and we're about to go back into rain. Gotta love May. It will be 55 degrees, and then next week will be 90 for the rest of the summer.
When's it raining? Tomorrow?
Yeah.
Okay.
Tomorrow, Friday, Saturday. I have a big thing on Saturday, and it's gonna thunderstorm.
Ooh.
Lovely.
Oh, that's not good.
No. Anyway, but happy almost June.
Can't wait.
What is today? The 28th?
Yes.
The 28th of May. Next week. Oh, wow. Next week we will be in June. So this is our last show of May of You.
The May of You.
The May of You, the growth month. And today, it is the growth month.
No, I know.
Why are you laughing?
No. It hasn't been a lot of growth.
For who? You?
For me.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was trying.
I know.
Okay, well.
Not because of you. It's not your fault.
Okay, well, I know you were just complaining to me about your day.
Yeah.
Yes, I know.
Rightfully so.
I know. My Thursdays are like your Wednesdays.
Yeah.
So tomorrow. Ooh.
These 2 nice days were 10 to 10. Both of them.
Oh, yesterday and today?
Yep.
I'm sorry.
Then tomorrow I get off and it's going to rain.
Listen, that is the story of my life every weekend. I'm like, oh, and then it's rain, and then everybody gets nice days. And I'm like, So anyway, here we are. Mm-hmm. And it is the last day of the May of You in the year of you. And we are going to talk today about manifesting how to get out of the fear of failure.
Manifesting the fear, yeah.
Not manifesting the fear of failure. Manifesting out of the fear of failure.
Right. Excellent.
Right?
Yep.
So when I say manifestation, I mean, you're developing the ability to understand, have awareness of whatever it is, but we're going to focus on the fear of failure, which encompasses many things. But then also talking about the fact that, what is the fear of failure, and how do you grow from that? Because so many people sit in it and don't realize it, or if they do realize it, they deny it because it's painful, because they'd have to acknowledge a lot of different things about themselves, and people like to stay at the surface. So, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just experienced it yesterday.
Oh, well, I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
We must channel. We must channel. Like, we have these telepathy things.
Started a new show. It's the first show. The anticipation of it and the possibility that it doesn't go well.
Yes.
Because everything's new.
And?
It went fine.
Oh.
But it was something that I dealt with. It was a lot of pressure for the 24, 48 hours before it.
Oh, very cool.
Weighed heavily.
But it went well.
It went well.
And so I'm going to use you as an example. So your anticipatory anxiety was based in irrational fear. Not rational, but irrational.
I don't know how irrational it was, but
oh, okay.
It could have gone badly.
There's Kevin.
Right.
Good morning, Kevin. Do you have historical evidence and facts that things like that would go badly?
Things happen.
Well, yeah.
You,
Well, I know
yeah, I was gonna say,
we had 7 weeks of living proof
you
of
know,
this show
yeah,
that went week to week. It was a little touch and go there for a while,
yeah.
almost 2 months worth.
Well, when StreamYard was screwing up and
Mm.
we had no audio and didn't know from one show to the next whether it was going to be audio or not.
And then it was glitching and so on and so
Yeah.
forth. But okay, but so since you're being difficult and not
I'm not
answering my
being difficult.
question,
I'm being honest.
you okay, anticipatory anxiety
Mhm.
of things usually is because you think you have facts that preemptively will inform your worries that are not really facts.
Mhm.
And therefore, the likelihood is that at least 9 times out of 10, or 9.9% of the time, 9.9%, I just sounded like I won't even say it. Mhm. That was incorrect math, but 99% of the
Yeah.
time, um, facts are that things will not turn out poorly, but we manifest in our heads these scenarios that come out that oh, this is going to be terrible, awful, and therefore it can sabotage us. It can make us stop from doing the thing. It can actually bring on bad mojo. Um, Lots of different ways of having the fear of failure comes out in a variety of ways. And so um, you were experiencing that yesterday with anticipatory anxiety
Right.
because you wanted it to be a certain way, and you probably had a mindset and a narrative in your mind of how it could go terribly awfully wrong.
Yeah.
But my question was that I felt like was not being answered. Let's try this again. Did you actually have facts that historically would back up that things would go terribly wrong in a way that, would destroy the show or be
Would? No.
okay?
Could, possibly.
Oh, you're so difficult.
No, it's
I understand. Yes, anything
not
could
every
happen.
fear is irrational. When you get unknowns, when you get
Right.
things that are out of control,
Well, yes.
it's reasonable to worry about them. But you got to place them in the right spot.
Well, okay, so that's where the
Yeah.
rational piece comes
Right.
in, is that some fears can be rational in terms of like, yes, something can go wrong, but the likelihood is, do we have historical fact to back up that your shows go terribly, awfully wrong? No.
No.
So if you're starting a new show, would you not do it ever, or would you have not done it based on the fact that you have these fears or that there's
No.
this thought? Right.
No.
So what is it that makes you bypass the fear?
What is it that makes me bypass the fear? Let me think of
Wow,
a succinct answer.
I have stumping questions for you
Yeah.
today, right out of the gate, so early. And
Well, first of all, I've dealt with this. So,
yes, so you have history.
yes.
So history has not repeated itself to be poor,
Right.
or bad.
Right.
Okay, so that helps you. But what else helps you push past the fear of just like getting paralyzed and not doing it?
Well, I would never get paralyzed and not do it because, again, the things out of your control are out of control. Just go do what you can do. And what happens, happens.
So you rationalize with reasonable thoughts
Yep.
that you're just going to push through, even though something could go wrong. You just have faith, or you have something, I don't know what it would be called because I don't want to name it for you, but you have something there that says, I can still do it despite all that.
Yeah. Again, control what I can control.
So the main thing is that you say you can control what you can control, and that's the thing that gets you through.
Yep.
Okay. So you're more advanced because when people I talk to, not you, but when I talk to just the everyday person that comes into my life, my practice or whatever, and talks about things that they want to do, for instance, like this is the month of them. So they're trying to grow and they're trying to add things in and make something new, right? Little micro goals or things like that. A lot of times the fear of failure comes in. And when I say fear of failure, people look at me like, no, why would I fear that? But at the end of the day, people then, when you really put it out into little subsections of what you're talking about, it's the perfectionism piece. Will it go well? What if it doesn't go well at all? What if it goes wrong? What if I embarrass myself? What if I get rejected? What if, the performance is, if it's a performative thing, what if I don't perform well? and then if it's a larger thing, like a life goal, that's, maybe a career goal, or being, starting up a business or something, on that magnitude,
Yep.
People get in their own way because all those little pieces get in the way of, it has to be perfect. And so, it's kind of like writing a book. We'll go to the writing the book, right? People want to write a book and they say, I always wanted to write a book, but I can't get off the ground. Why? Most of the time I hear when people can't get off the ground of it is because they have to have it perfect. And my thing, because we talked about writing books, is always just write. It doesn't have to be perfect, but people get stuck in that one particular, I use that
What
one
is the
particular
perfect book?
But it's not the perfect book. It's
No.
about the perfect, like, what do I write about?
Yeah.
How do I write about it? How do I write perfectly?
Yeah.
I have someone that was talking about this with me yesterday, and although I don't agree with the use of AI to do this, they're using AI to do the whole thing. And it will be interesting. I'm interested in reading the outcome of the book. I mean, it's all their ideas. It's just that it's being rerouted through AI, rewriting it for them in their ideas. So I'm interested in seeing how that comes out, because I know their voice and I know how they are in their speaking. So I said, you've got to try to keep it in the tone of how you're speaking.
That's right. Yeah.
And I don't know how that will work. Because I'm not familiar enough with, I have used AI stuff to like clean up a sentence or something like that or whatever, but I've never seen it used as a whole text. So I'm interested to see that. But I think that also takes away the fear of the failure, because now you've got like a crutch to lean on, and those weren't there before for like something like writing a book. So it certainly makes it easier. But people left and right are writing books now because ChatGPT, you put your ideas in, and like if we took our show today, and I dropped in all my text and just had it about that, it could write a book for me.
Right.
And that's amazing. And it takes all the pressure off of having to actually write, because people speak freely and it's easier. So
But you didn't write the book.
But you didn't write it.
Yeah.
But if we were to take the transcript of today and it just dropped it into a text, and then Chat GPT or whatever people use, I think Grammarly or whatever, to clean it up, it's still your own ideas, but then did you write it? So not the issue, but it's more about, I think it takes the stigma and the worry and concern of being perfect, knowing where to start, how to start it, because you have this other entity now being able to pick up the slack for you, where the perfectionism doesn't have to be there for you because it's going to write it for you. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay. Oh, good.
Let's go back.
Oh, let's go back. I love going
Not
back.
to defend myself.
My God, here we go.
Not to put myself in her class, but Simone Biles.
Yes.
Had very similar issues in the Olympics, where, she's doing balance beam routine and got the yips, right? Was it balance beam?
No, she was floor and vault.
Okay. So things can go wrong.
She got the twisties.
Yeah, she gets the twisties.
It's like the yips.
Things can go wrong,
yes.
Although most of that is in her control.
Right. But so if we use the example, so I don't know if she would have, I'd have to read it back, because I don't ever think that she called it fear of failure. It was more that she got in her head. But yes, I guess she would. I don't think she used the terms fear of failure, because I just went through like in my head a run of like her interviews, and she talked about like that it was that letting down herself and her team because she knew her head wasn't in the right space.
Oh, that's semantics.
And that, right. Yeah. So it really is the fear of failure of not being able to produce what she thought she was expected to do, because it did come out finally that, she worried about what other people were thinking if she couldn't get to the level that they thought she should be at, which by the time she got back in it and she had therapy and she went through these kinds of things I'm talking about really addressing the fact of you're not manifesting your month of May for someone else. You're doing it for you. Mm-hmm. If you're doing it for someone else, that's a really important start of the fear of failure, is that when you're doing for another person or a coach or parents or teachers or authority figures in your mind or someone that you think has some kind of impact on you, the likelihood is if your ego strength, your reality manager is askew, which many people's are because that's how we're raised, you're going to be more likely to balk and not be able to do the thing in a way that you would like to because you're too worried about the other person and their thoughts on it and being able to produce. So people will self-sabotage. I see a lot of this in sports where people have fear of failure. It will come out in the fact that they're pushed so hard that it looks like they're pushing themselves, but it's externals obviously pushing them. And so what happens? They get injured. Injuries are often, I see this a lot in gymnastics, and I see this a lot in ice skating, that people will get injured as a way of, it's an unconscious or subconscious, deeper rooted thing. It's not like actively anyone's going out and saying, I'm going to go hurt myself.
Right.
But their anxiety gets in the way, their thought process of, gets in the way. And I mean, I do have people that have actively told me that, they hoped that they got hurt so that they wouldn't have to do the bigger thing because they were tired or they had burned out. And they actively sabotage themselves. It's more rare to hear someone tell me that, but I have. God bless them for knowing that they actively did that. But I'm like, we don't need to hurt ourselves. But people will utilize that strategy over just being honest with themselves to say, I don't want to do this, or I don't want to perform at that level, or I don't want to have to worry about what other people think. So I can just go out and do my thing. And that happens in lots of different ways. It gets in the way of people starting a business. It gets in the way of people being entrepreneurs. It gets in the way of, launching yourself in the way that you want to and holding yourself back because you become complacent and complicit to your own mindset of fear of the fail.
I think you just hit the core of it. If your
I couldn't repeat that again if I tried.
If your fear of failure is based on what other people think,
yes,
on the Hall of Fame list of things you can't control,
yes, is what other people
what's
think.
top 3? What other people think?
But we as human beings, not just we here, but we as human beings across the world worry excessively, like over the top about what other people think. And I thought that was a good topic for the end of May because a lot of people have been really into the year of you doing this. And I've had a lot of good success with people saying like, wow, they've changed a lot. And so then I hear, and we're also at the half year mark. Yesterday we were at half year, I think.
Are we?
Yeah, we're at the half year mark. So people have been asking me like, okay, now what do I do? Because I've had, as I said, lots of people with success of doing this year of you thing and loving the concept of this. So I'm loving it too. But then I also have people at the same time who are having success, and some that aren't, because of the question that keeps coming up of, okay, now what do I do when I'm getting in my own way because I'm still worried about what if it doesn't work, or what if it doesn't manifest out, or, someone said something negative about it and it got in my head. So what do I do with that? And my comment is, about when people say things, who cares?
Yeah.
I mean, care about it if it's something constructive that will actually help you, but if it's something that's negating of the goal you have, or something that is a detriment to it moving forward, and it's not actually feedback that would help it move forward, negate it. Right. So, and I have very clear examples. It doesn't mean that if someone's giving you feedback, and you don't like it, that doesn't mean that you should negate it. It's about really looking at the reality of it and saying, is this helping shape my goal, or is this just, taking the crab in the bucket and pulling me back in so I don't have success?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Or am I doing that to myself? Because we self-sabotage. We're very good at being raised by being gaslit in our society, and then we go and gaslight ourselves. And I know people get really irritated with the use of gaslight because they use it poorly and wrong. But it's having a negative self-talk that is sabotaging and abusive to your own self, to demean yourself enough and belittle yourself enough to not make you move forward, and then finding reason in the fact that, well, see, I couldn't do it. I wasn't able to do it.
Right.
Well, why? Because you sabotaged yourself, because you told yourself you couldn't do it, because you believe that other people believe that you can't do it. You've got to take those tapes and those voices in your head that are not psychotic, unless you are psychotic, but you have to put them out of your head to be able to say, this is not something I need to listen to. And if I am listening to it, I've got to really quell the sound because it gets in the way. And that's why people do not launch and do get stuck. And I think of this in entrepreneurship a lot, of people wanting to have, they're stuck in the place that they've always been in, like the job, or they're stuck in just, the mediocrity of, unfortunately, what they've settled for. But they don't feel happy with it, but they also don't have the passion or the drive. And I would contend that they actually do have passion and drive, but it's so squelched because they have the fear that they can't go forward or that they won't be successful. And it's too much effort and work,
right,
because they've been taught that, or they've trained themselves that it's too much effort and work to get past that. And so there's so many pieces that go into failure. And it's not even talking about the fail, because failures have to happen, especially when you're doing something like, going to college, starting a new career, wanting a new career, switching a career, adding in, staying in your, you do this and I do this. We have a central core of what we do, but then we diversify out into lots of different areas to be able to still do what we love, but it's not over and over repetitive of the same exact thing, because we've been able to push it out.
Right.
Like, I have my practice, I have my things outside of that are similar, but then I have the podcast and I write. And so there's all these different things, but they're all within the same rubric of being an entrepreneur. And people ask me in this month, that they've asked, did you always, I never think of myself as an entrepreneur, like generally,
right,
but I am, like you are, right? You do your own, you
Yeah.
run your own life, you run your own business, you run your own jobs, you do your thing. But it's really about how come that has manifested itself in that way. It's because I've diversified. I've taken my core stuff and found all my interests and niche and gone, oh, I like this. And this is where I can add it in. I mean, is there a fear of failure? People have asked me, do you have a fear of failure? I don't think I have the fear of failure about those things now, but I think that in youth, the fear of failure was there because, like, when I was a gymnast, for sure, because I was very much what I'm talking about, and so are most people, about the fact that I performed not for me. I didn't do gymnastics for me. That was not, I was too little when I started to know, even to make the decision. It was something that was thrust upon me. This is what you're doing, which is what parents do, right? Like, they throw kids into soccer, football, t-ball, gymnastics, swimming, skating, whatever it is. And then it becomes a thing. Mine had a little extra push. But the fear of failure was definitely there, because I had a lot on, I had a lot on the line. I had a whole national team. I had big time coaches. I had parents who were coaches. I had like a whole community that was always riding on my success, literally. And that's not to be like arrogant about it. Literally my whole hometown. And this is what happens, like, to Suni Lee and to Simone Biles, your hometown, when you become sort of a semi-famous person in your sport or in your thing, they become rallied around you. And when you fail, so to speak, you'd think that they rally around you, but they don't. They, and I think that in the time of the recent tennis players and the recent golfers and the recent ice skaters and gymnasts who have come out and said, I need mental health days. I need to have mental health awareness. And the backlash that came initially from those initial people doing that, like, as if you're weak, or as if that's a bad thing, and it's a really good thing, because look at what happened. Every single person that went and did that came back even stronger. And people aren't looking at that. They're too busy criticizing, like, that's a fail. No, that's a growth. That's a huge growth, to have the awareness that you need to step it back and get your head right and do it for you and figure out, why are you doing this?
All right. So not to take this into the woods,
but we will.
But you just touched on a subject that I've been passionate about for years.
Yes.
I hate the Little League World Series on ESPN. Hate it. It's too much for those kids.
You've told me that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
in my mind, it's too much for those kids.
It is an intense, well, yes. So I don't want to say it's a necessary evil because it's not a necessary evil. It's an evil that comes with the territory of the intensity of the people that are involved in the baseball to that level.
Yeah.
It's a lot of coaches that are parents and coaches that have been at that level that never made it to like the major leagues that do it. So there's a lot of pressure.
It would be fine if it weren't on ESPN.
Well, and that's and that's the thing. So on one side, I understand from the perspective of knowing like the television aspect that they want to televise it because they want to highlight these kids because all these things, but then not realizing how much pressure goes into that. And it's not to say that if it wasn't on TV, there wouldn't be the pressure, because there still is, but it adds another level of
But it's not on
pressure.
every living room TV in your hometown.
It is or isn't.
It isn't. If the TV's not there.
Right. Well, you're right, because then there's not the same spectacle of it, right? So, and that's just like, well, I liken it to the, look at the spelling bee. The spelling bee, right? The kids that get put out to do the spelling bee, the amount of pressure that's placed on the kids to do the spelling bee is very similar, because nationally televised, right?
Right.
So it's the same kind of thing, and it's the amount of training. I don't know if people realize this, the amount of training and the amount of time and effort that goes into the kids that make it to those top ranked top 10 spots of being able to spell every word under the sun. It does not come lightly, and there's a lot of pressure on kids to do that.
How do you train for a spelling bee?
You should see some of the interviews of the kids that have won and the top, like they've had it on certain specials over the years. Hours and hours on a daily of sitting down and doing sentences and using the words and spelling them, and like, words that no one will ever use, but they have them at their, and it's kind of the same thing. But I don't know if you saw last year, the kid that won last year on the spelling bee, I had a psychological commentary when I watched it. I don't know, we may have talked about it. I might have mentioned it on the show that when he was interviewed, his affect was so flat. Like, I can remember he was on the Today Show, and he was on another show, and everyone else was like, this is so great, it's so exciting. His affect was so flat, like it was so deadened and manufactured, because it was just like he had to do it. It's almost like he came out of a war zone because he was it looked like his face was in shell shock. And it was interesting to me as a psychological watch, because he was consistent like that across the board. That's how he did the spelling bee. That's how he reacted when he won. There was no over the top. Now, could he have been an ASD, on the spectrum a little bit? Yeah. Maybe. But I saw that across the board in a lot of the kids that were doing it. And I don't think that everybody is spectrum disorder. So I think it's a matter of, it's that I'm in the trained mode to not fail. So therefore I have to be focused. And that is part of that failure, is that if we lose composure,
suppressing the fear of failure,
right? It'd
getting
be
into that.
It's suppressing it and getting a composure about yourself. And it may be there, but it's buried so hard and so deep that even upon interview of excitement and happiness, you don't let the joy out, because there's a fear of like expressing that, because it gets so trained into it. And I can liken that to also going through gymnastics. In my case, is when you had a failure, you were noted as being a failure. Yeah. When you had a success, there was no accolades for that, because it was never good enough.
Yeah.
Like it was always the message of, and this is to the baseball thing too, there's always someone out there better, stronger, faster. And if it's not you, and if it is you today, it won't be you tomorrow. So you better work harder. It's this constant train of do. And it creates a cycle in people that, perfectionism, performance perfectionism, and it's unrealistic for people. And the other side of that is when, people just kind of get the complacent, complicit, like go shoot for the middle, which I'm not a believer in. That's go be average. No, be your best self. Really shoot for how to be the best you, but you have to do it in smaller micro chunks. And you've got to really, I wish we could have classes on this too for kids growing up and parents, or parents that are about to be parents, of like how not to push your kids in a direction of getting them so self-conscious, into shame and doubt in the first few years of their life, that they have to be able to function, um, under the guise of impressing somebody else.
Isn't that all wrapped up in how you deal early with quote unquote failure? And I'm using air quotes there because
Yes.
kids screw up,
Mm-hmm.
and how you deal with it. And it's like, okay, well, next time, whatever your approach is, it's like, well, okay, what can we learn from this?
Well,
My kids are rolling their eyes because I used to tell them all the time. My favorite question was, all right, what did you learn?
so I think that's a great question, because that's, I think if it's about a seriousness of like really investing in the development of your kid to be having a good self-esteem, of like, okay, what did you learn from that?
Yep.
What could you be different? Or what could you change? Those are such good questions if
Because
parents
that's
take
turning failure
to something successful.
into education.
Exactly,
Yeah.
because failure is an education.
Right.
You have to fail. And people are always like, it's so cliche, but no, you have to fail. You
Yeah.
have to have devastation sometimes, or just short of devastation of something you didn't want as a result, to be able to go, okay, how do I rally to get past this? Or how do
Virtually
I
anyone
move
who
it?
has success has those stories. You don't hear them.
Right.
Nobody pays attention to them, but
Right.
they'll tell you the stories.
Well, and that's why there's no overnight success. People
Right.
say they were overnight success.
Right.
But if you sit down and ask someone about their story, because, I've been in practice for 30 years, right? And people obviously don't always know that. And they're like, oh my God, and you do all these things and all that. Well, yeah, but I don't talk about it. And I don't, that's not something it's just, it is how you keep manifesting, because you recreate yourself and diversify and recreate and diversify and recreate and diversify, so that you can keep growing and not be complacent and complicit. And coming back to the thing about how you talk to your kids, when I was away last week, when I was in Minnesota, we were I pay attention to how parents talk to their kids a lot, right? And big foyer, they're doing the big breakfast. This hotel does this big breakfast for everybody, and they had a sports team there, and playing baseball or something, and this mother had her, not the it was probably a sibling of one of the older kids that was on the team, but I was sitting with my friend and we were chatting, and all of a sudden the little girl this little girl had a plate of sausages and there was nothing else to block the sausages from rolling. Very basic, like you would think, totally innocuous, right?
Yep.
And I was giggling because the girl was really trying to figure out, because she needed to move tables because there was someone cleaning the table. And I was watching her, and she was maybe 6, and the sausage kept rolling, and I was like, those are going on the floor. They're going off. I was just like, and I was watching her, and my friend was watching her, and sure enough, they went on the floor, and she bent down and she picked them up to put them on the plate. Now, do we know if her intention was then to eat them? Do we know if she had the knowledge that they were now probably dirty off of that floor? Right? Whatever. She was doing the right thing. She picked them back up off the floor, put them on the plate. As she was putting them on the plate, here's where the problem comes. The parenting problem comes. All of a sudden, this woman from like the 1,000-foot view comes flying in like a eagle with talons, like ready to go, and it sort of scared us. Not scared like but just gave me the because her response wasn't a response; it was a reaction, and she zinged at the kid and went right at them like, are you stupid? No. Right out of her mouth. She says, are you stupid? Those are dirty now. You can't eat those. Go put those into the garbage and go get another plate. And she grabbed her. And I was like, oh my God.
6?
Roughly. She was maybe 5 or 6 years old. And that right there is the setup for fear of failure. This little girl now will interpret and integrate. And I'm sure that's not the first time that this child has been treated like that, because it clearly was how this mother was. That mother was an angry mother. And instead of it being corrective of like, oh, it's no big deal, whatever, she created a fear of shame and guilt, but mostly shame and embarrassment, which is the underside of the perfectionism, right?
Right.
And the injury to the seat of the soul, the narcissism piece of like, I did something wrong and I can't make a mistake. I can't drop something. That makes me a bad person, right? Because shame is I am bad. And this mother reinforced, you cannot fail. You cannot drop things. You cannot make a mistake. And now, because of it, I'm going to shame you and publicly humiliate you into this. And I use that as the example because that little interaction has changed, even without knowing what's happened before or any other stuff. So I know that has changed the psyche of that young little girl to fear failure in everything and anything she could possibly do in the future, because she's always going to be mindful that there's a watching eye, whether it's her mother or someone else, because she's fearing now being judged, or that she can't make a mistake like dropping a sausage on the ground. As silly as that sounds to us, it's serious, right? That she didn't do it right. She didn't do it enough right. She didn't do it perfect enough. And it could have just been easily remedied with, oh, it's okay, pick them up, we'll just go get some more. Like, no. This mother, and the grab is what got me too. It was like she reinforced it with a grab of like, she wanted to hurt the little girl for making the mistake. So now she's got a behavioral reinforcement with a physical reinforcement of you are bad. And that manifests into life and down the line of you cannot make mistakes. You cannot be, because if you make a mistake, what does it mean? It means you're bad. And if you're bad, it means you're not worthwhile, you're not worthy, that no one will love you. Like, this is how it translates down the line.
So is this the start of the path back? We talked about it a week ago or a couple weeks ago about reparenting yourself. Yeah, well, understanding that a lot of these come from your parenting or your upbringing.
Yes. So if
being aware of that and then treating yourself better so you can.
If the little girl comes through life and has more of these, which she will, because I just predict human nature of this mother, that she will have to eventually, she'll go two paths. She'll go the path of figuring it out, that awareness, this isn't healthy, this isn't normal, and I have to reparent myself. Or she will go the other direction of getting so shamed and so sucked in that she'll become more reclusive, more isolative, more codependent, probably get into a relationship where she's treated like that by another person or has friendships like that.
Yeah.
Or a little combination of both. My guess is, because of how harsh that was, she's going to have a struggle to get to the point where she has to realize that she has to be a reparent of herself, because she's going to feel that that's the norm, because that's what she knows, because no one's there to correct it and say, hey, overreacting. And I wasn't the Karen, as people would call it. I wasn't the Karen to jump in because I didn't want to deal with that at that time. And neither did my friend, but it was notable to the entire area that we were around that it was over the top.
It's funny. I have this, when I was in my early teens, I became friends with a family they had about 6 kids, and they lived quite a ways away, but just hanging out with them a lot. And it was a whole different dynamic from a family standpoint, from a parenting standpoint. It was like, because you grow up, when you're young, you grow up thinking this is the way it is. You accept it as reality. This is the way it is. And then all of a sudden I realized
it's not.
No, there's other ways to do this. There's other ways to go about it. There are other ways to interact.
Right.
And it made a big change in me. It made me instantly aware of what I was dealing with, and then what the pluses and minuses were of that.
And I think that when kids get the opportunity to have the social norming of other families around them, it definitely helps them become more in tune with not having the fears that they came with maybe without that initially.
Because what you realize is, I feel good around these people.
Right.
I feel more capable around these people. I take more chances.
Well, right, because
I grow around these people.
Well, I was gonna say, because you have a growth environment. When you have a growth, learn, and change environment, it makes a bigger difference. Many people don't get exposed to that, because when you have an environment where you're growing up in a, say, that little girl's environment that I just talked about, the likelihood, predictably, is that she's going to be sheltered from being allowed to have the input of others, unfortunately. And it will be much later in life that she might see it, but it will be much later in life before she can get to a point where she would take the risk or step out, because the snapback would be there of like, it's that authoritarianism. It's they do as I say, not as I do.
Yep.
And if you go outside of this house kind of message, right? If it, don't let anyone see beyond the four walls, or the glass house that everyone can see, because usually parents think that no one can see.
You can't go eat over
But
your friend's house. You'll drop the sausage.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And don't you dare embarrass me.
Right.
The messaging of this is such a bad message. And I mean bad. I usually don't say bad. It's not just negative. It's a bad message to send to your kids when parents, and I still hear people do this. Don't do that, because you're an extension of me and you're going to embarrass me.
Yeah.
Such a bad message.
Yeah.
Like, your kid is a separate individual. Yes, they are a reflection of you as a parent when they're doing bad behaviors, especially if you don't correct them, if you are not giving appropriate natural consequences for, even when you're a late teen, early 20s person, and you're doing things that are not healthy.
Yep.
And your parent just goes and does something that's very inconsequential to the consequence that really should happen. You're having this perpetuation of the unreality,
Yep.
the non-reality of what life is really about, because natural consequences to things are much bigger than that. And so when you have the exposure, and you see that other families or other people don't have the pressure of being humiliated or embarrassed or an extension of, and that they have to worry about that makes a big difference.
I've always thought that connecting action to consequences, job one of parenting,
Mm-hmm.
but appropriately. In other words, dropping a sausage is not screaming across the room. That's not the consequence you should have from that.
Right. Exactly. Right? Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's not right. There should be no consequence for dropping a sausage or spilling milk, or, or getting dirty, getting your hands dirty in the mud. You see little kids get, and the parents like, oh my God, you got your clothes dirty. That's what you make a washing machine for. That's why you have play clothes. That's why,
the message is, thanks for trying to move the sausage, but
right.
Those are no good. Let's go get some more.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Not screaming and yelling and then grabbing the kid. Which are those, I when I teach my class, and I'm sure I have kids, I'm sure I have students that are listening right now that have heard me tell this story, is, I think grocery stores are a wonderful petri dish of watching bad parenting. Right?
Absolutely.
I think they are one of the most, that and amusement parks. Disney World and Market Basket are, not to pick on Market Basket, but it's one of the main grocery stores around here. Yeah. If you want to have a good Saturday laugh, you go in and laugh, and tongue in cheek here, but you go in and watch the most atrocious parenting is happening at Disney World because people, you just see so many things. And one of the highlights that I often see, that's the behavioral reinforcer for the fear of failure being built in kids, is there was this one time, and I see it still, but there was this very one point in time that I was walking down an aisle, and the other aisle, I could hear a child being reprimanded for hitting their sibling. And I was close to making the turn. So I come around the turn, and the parent is going right at this kid for hitting. And I think the kid bit the other, and I don't know, the kids were like 7 and 4 or something like that. And as she was saying, don't do that to your brother or your sister. I can't remember now because it's been so long, but she did the behavior she was telling them not to do. And she didn't bite, but she hit and slapped and bapped on the head as she was saying, don't do the same behavior. And I felt my tongue bleeding, going, lady, you are creating, so it's like, oh my God. And I'm sure I gave a side eye. I don't know, but knowing me, I'm sure I gave a side eye because I needed to be in the aisle and I needed to get something near where she was. And I was like, oh, but when I teach about this, I teach about it, the fact that there's the reinforcer of do as I say, not as I do. And what you're teaching is the child needs to be a natural consequence for doing that. And instead, what it got was a reinforcer for bad behavior, which then what teaches the child how to then circumvent and still do the same behavior because they're confused. Now the little brain is confused.
Yep.
Because now they're like, okay, I fear my parent. I fear being in trouble for doing something wrong, but I wasn't corrected on what not to do and how to then replace that behavior. I was shown that I should still do it while being shamed, which created fear in me. But now my fear is that I'll get caught.
Yeah.
Instead of my fear is, oh, that's the wrong thing to do. But she told me how to do the right thing. Like, keep your hands to yourself. Let me take you out of the cart. Like, let's, stop fighting. No, instead, now I just taught my kid how to circumvent the system of the social norm to be able to be successful. So now the kid lives in fear. Now, how does that relate to fear of failure? How do I not upset my parent or upset other people by doing bad behaviors? I just find a way around them. I don't know the new behavior to do to replace it. I just find a way around it and still do the same behavior, which is why you get a lot of kids that will repeat behaviors while apologizing for them, but not change the behavior, because they'll say, but I'm sorry. I said, I'm sorry, but you're still doing the same behavior. Right? It's a very vicious cycle, but then it's because, and the kid will keep doing it because they fear failure, which sets up a narcissistic cycle for them to become the adult that always says, well, I'm not perfect. No one expects you to be perfect, but they use that as a defense to go right into that, because they fear that they're being judged as being a failure, because they're judging themselves as being a failure because someone else has judged that. Instead, it's like, no one's judging you for being a failure or being imperfect. It was, you were just asked to pick up your socks off the floor, kind of thing.
I had the worst parenting experience in Market Basket the other day. It's funny you bring that up. I would go to the cafe line before work because it's easier and it's out in freaking Seabrook, which is a zoo of a Market Basket.
Yes.
And because someone was actually using it as the cafe line and having coffees made it back things up a little bit. And there was a woman behind me, and she had a phone app that apparently was reminding her on an every 30-second basis that there's a child in the car. So all I heard for like 3.5 minutes was, there's a child in the car. And it's like, what are we doing? First of all, leaving a child in the car, first of all. Secondly, for a coffee. And it was about 4 or 5 minutes, and you're just getting these repeat app things. And it's like,
wow, there's a new one for me.
It was wild.
Wow.
And it just kept coming at me like every 30 or 45 seconds.
Did you give side eye?
There's a child in the car. No.
Well, it wasn't her.
I rarely stop at side eyes. I don't go there.
Oh, was it hot out?
No, it wasn't particularly hot out.
Oh, good.
You don't leave your child in the car.
No. Well, a lot of people do. And
unattended?
Well, they do.
Yeah.
And pets.
And you need an app to remind you left a child in the car?
There was, so when I rented the car when I was out in Minnesota, to your point, off topic, but really on topic, the car I rented, when you turned it off, it wouldn't actually let you turn the car off until it would pop up. The screen was this big. It was so weird. It was a Ford something, I don't know, right? Big. It was like an SUV. But on the screen, it said in big letters, and it had a binging sound to it, and it would not let you turn it off or lock up until you read it, and it says check back seat for items and children.
Yeah.
You know why? For that same reason.
Yep.
And I've never seen that before, and so we all were laughing because we were all adults, and I kept being like, okay, make sure you get out of the car. Get out of the car.
Have you heard these ads on the radio?
Get out.
Where it's like, even good parents leave their kids in the car, and it's hot and doing the whole thing. And good parents don't leave their kids, certainly not by accident.
Like, well, right. Like you know.
I forgot I had a kid with me.
It always baffles me that, like, how do you forget you have a baby in the car or a kid in the car?
Yeah.
Obviously in those cases where they have had that. I mean, I'm notorious for leaving my phone on top of the hood of my car, which has gone flying off on the highway several times in my lifetime. But that's
not
different.
A kid.
That's me putting, my phone on top of the car. But I wouldn't leave a child or animal in the car.
Yeah.
But yes, so there was our little side tangent on that.
Yeah.
By the way, did you give side eye? Kate is joining us. So we have to acknowledge Kate. Finally, look at me. Finally, it's her last day of high school.
She didn't put finally.
God, no, I'm putting finally. It's Catherine Ann's last day of high school ever.
Congratulations.
Thank you to me.
To everybody involved.
Thank you to me for making it through Kate's last day. Well, actually, her last year of high school, her last 3 years of high school. Congratulations, Kate.
Yeah.
Kate, actually, and Cameron both. Yes, we know. Last day, Kate. Kate is, and Cameron both are getting awarded tonight scholarships from a special source that we are unknowing about how much or who it, well, I know who it's coming from. I don't know if Kate knows, but I do. But they're both getting awarded wonderful things, and I'm going to this ceremony tonight and I'm very excited about it because I'm very proud of them for doing that, because they're both excelling beautifully. So talk about fear of failure. I'm going to use this as a little jumping point because I think Kate would be, and she's probably going to kill me for saying this, I would say that Kate, I love you dearly, but I think there was probably a little fear of failure, but I'm not going to go into the story of why, but there was a lot of stuff that happened in her beginning of her high school times. And what does she say?
She said, I don't know. Wait, text me.
Oh, wait.
What do you mean?
I don't know what she's asking about.
It's a scholarship.
Oh, I'm so happy you're coming. Yes, me too. But the fear of failure could have definitely taken over for both Cameron and Catherine because of some stuff that initially happened 4 years ago. Their dad passed. And I think that could have been a huge contributor to it. But they had good, yummy people in their life, like their mom and me and John and other people to be like, let's go. And a whole bunch of other people too. But, I'm going to jump in.
Is a lot of your work going back to the point where we got to earlier, where you figure out the source of, for example, what we're talking about today, the fear of failure, usually upbringing, and then kind of rewire that?
Yes. So the reparenting is the rewiring. By the way, Kate just gave me consent. Well, Catherine, I love you dearly, but you're not my patient, so I had consent anyway. But thank you. But I appreciate it. And what'd she say? I can't see because I don't have my glasses.
Definite fear of failure. I would agree.
Oh, good.
But look where I am now.
Well, and so this is to my point. That's why I was hoping that she wouldn't kill me for outing her. That, I mean, there could have been so many stunting things in that way because Dad died, and she could have collapsed in, and so could have Cameron on it, and and people do, they go right in on feeling all kinds of fears of failure, fears of guilt, all the things that come, and Catherine particularly, I will use that as a great example of she really had a hard time, and then she really was able to turn it around, and has done a beautiful job, and she's going into a great career, and is already it's already booming, and we haven't even gotten there yet.
Nice.
And she said, I will say I collapsed for a little bit. Yeah.
Understandable.
But Kate, since I have you here and you're texting, wouldn't you say that when you could have collapsed, didn't you have a huge fear that you wouldn't be able to turn it around because you kind of went in on yourself for a little while? Let's see what she says. I'm going to say that because I think that's a common experience.
Perfectly understandable.
Yeah. And I don't know if, I don't think, because I know I wrote her really hard about it. So I don't know if she connects them, that I was writing her about that so that she wouldn't collapse in on herself. Let's see what she said.
Yes, but that was my motivation to turn it
around. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, oh yay, I love that. Yay. And I'm very proud of her because it was a hard, you lose your dad.
Turning it into a learning experience and turning it into a gain.
Right.
Right.
Well, it's, in a case of a loss of a parent at an early age, at 14 years old or 13 at the time, is huge. And it has so many places that it can really take you and change you and stunt the growth. And to have the ability to really pull it and turn it around is enormous. So, and that's a reparenting of self, but also good people around her. And I think that, it takes a village, and I think but you have to be willing to take that help.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things I can say, for Kate and for other people like Kate that I'm talking about, that when you sit in your shit, you have to get to a point where you have to you got to hear and see your own self. You got to soothe yourself. You got to find an emotionally safe spot for you to, you have to do your 4 S's. You have to do the safety, the soothing, the security, and and being seen for yourself so that you can open the door for it to be something healthy.
Well, things as small as taking sausage to another table
Right.
are too much for a 6-year-old often,
Right.
right?
Right.
You need good shepherding.
Right. Exactly. Right. Not someone grabbing you and telling you you're stupid.
Right.
Right. And she just said, I think the collapse helped me come back around. So that's the failure, right? The collapsing in is the fail, and you learn out of that. You can either, that's the two paths. You can either grow from it or you can fall apart. And, and thank you. She says she's proud of me too for the contribution. You're very welcome. But I think that the words like the collapse helped her come back around. Collapse or failure makes growth.
Right.
And if you don't see educational moments in failing, or that if you disappoint someone, or you, and I'm not talking about Kate, I'm talking in general. If you disappoint someone that is your coach or your teacher or your parent, or you don't live up to the expectation you think they have of you, or the one that they put on you,
right,
that's not a you issue. Unless you continue to perpetuate a demotivated, like mediocre, like not living up to your best potential kind of thing, that's a you issue. But you have to look at like those outside externals as, don't let them get in your way and paralyze you, because there's so many people out there that are going to bring you down. There's so many people that are going to be like, you can't make it, you can't do it, you'll never be anything, because that's what people do.
Well, fear of failure is a product of death of self, isn't it? Because failure is, I'm failure, I'm not perfect. Well, if you accept, if you're okay with yourself, where I'm going to make mistakes.
Right. And the death of self is such an important concept when we talk about the fear of failure, because people don't realize that the death of self is that loss of identity, because you're not doing your own identity. You're doing
personal value. Your value is based on what other people think.
Your value is being based on others' thoughts, feelings, and worth towards you.
Right.
And if I don't do what you wanted me to, or I think you wanted me to, my worth is not worthy.
Yep.
And that can't happen. That will get in your way. And if you don't reparent, like I did a lot of my own reparenting around my stuff. Right. And I know a ton of people in my field, like I think psychologists are just prone to having to reparent themselves, because we go into this for a lot of reasons to reparent ourselves.
There's a lot of focus on your own how you were parented.
Right. Yeah. Because we learn, that's what we learn about how to make sure that we help people reparent themselves. So you have inevitably to reparent your own self, or else you can't help other people. So it's an important product of that. Oh, I'm looking at the time. Oh, she says, I think fear of failure for me led to the loss of identity, which was necessary to find my personal morals, values, and identity. I agree. Mm-hmm. You and I have had conversations about that. She is very different than who she. Oh, yes. You're a very different person. I was going to say something, but you're lovely. Kate's very lovely now. We had a few moments of not so lovely time, but I chalk it up to teenagerdom.
13-year-olds, yeah.
Well, 13 and 14 was
exactly, yeah.
And a little 15. Right, Kate? We had a little moment or
13
two.
to 17 is kind of challenging anyway.
Yeah, her 17th year has been pretty good, and 18 has been pretty good. we're doing 17.
It's a different kind of problematic.
Yeah, 13, 14, 15. Woo! Yeah. Right? She's laughing.
Yeah.
She's laughing. It was bad. We loved each other a lot. Maybe a little 16.
A little 16. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But I appreciate Kate let me use her as the fear of failure example, because I think it was a good, and I think that the loss of identity, when you lose a parent, we are great. Yes, we are. I'm reassuring her. But I think the loss of identity is such an important piece to talk about when you're talking about growth. So in wrapping up for today, in the end of the growth of May and having the May of you, is really being able to know, like, what's your identity? Are you doing it for you? Are you growing for you? Are you trying to grow for someone else? Don't grow for someone else. Grow for you. People will benefit from that.
Yeah.
And then that makes a difference. But grow out of this month into the, we're doing the next half of the year in June. Grow for you. Make sure you're checking in with yourself every day to know that you have growth towards a you focus, not in a selfish way, but in a way that's going to make you your best success, so that your failure, if it comes and you drop the sausage, you just pick it up and get a new one.
Yep.
You just recook some, right? You find alternatives. Don't be the person that
It has
gets
nothing
shamed.
to do with you being stupid.
No, or needing to be grabbed.
Right.
Right. So, all right, you guys, have a wonderful end of May. Go grow, 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 learn and change. And I will be here to start June off next week.